he said no more. No mas!
Imagine being so good, so dangerous, so undeniable that the biggest star in your entire sport refuses to fight you. Not because you're not ready, not because you're not a champion, but because facing you might be the one fight that could actually end his legacy. That's not a movie plot. That's the real life of a boxer named David Benavidez. Pause. He's undefeated. He's a two-time world champion in 2 different weight classes. He hits like a truck, and he's still in his 20s. And yet, for years, the sport's biggest name, Canelo Alvarez, kept finding reasons to avoid him. But here's the thing most people don't know. Before David Benavidez became the most avoided man in boxing, he was a broken teenager who almost lost everything. He tested positive for cocaine. He got stripped of his world title twice. He watched opportunities slip through his fingers over and over again, while people online called him a failure, a wasted talent, a cautionary tale. So how did that kid become this? Stay with me, because this story is not just about boxing. It's about a young man who had to fight his way back from rock bottom, not once, but twice, just to get a chance most fighters would kill for. Let's get into it. Born into the fight. David Benavidez was born on December 17th, 1996 in Phoenix, Arizona. And when I say he was born into boxing, I mean that almost literally. He was in a boxing gym by the time he was 3 years old. Pause. His father, Jose Benavidez Sr., was obsessed with the sport. Not the kind of dad who just wants his son to play a little sport on the weekends. This was a man who built his entire family around one dream. Both of his sons, David and his older brother, Jose Jr., were raised to be fighters. No amateur babying, no soft introduction. Jose Sr. trained them like professionals from day one. And that's actually a wild detail about David's story. Most world champions come up through the amateur ranks, hundreds of amateur fights, headgear, a whole system. David barely did any of that. His dad believed the amateur style taught bad habits, slapping punches instead of committing to real, full-power shots. So instead, David trained like a professional, even as a little kid. But here's something people don't expect when they hear future world champion. David wasn't some lean athletic prodigy as a kid. At just 13 years old, he weighed almost 250 pounds. Pause. Read that again. A 13-year-old boy, 250 pounds. Can you imagine being a teenager, already dealing with everything that comes with being a teenager, and on top of that, carrying that kind of weight, knowing your whole family's dream depends on you becoming an elite athlete? That's a heavy thing to put on a kid's shoulders. Literally and emotionally. It took him nearly 2 years to cut that weight down and transform his body into what would become one of the most feared physiques in the sport. And that struggle, that early battle with his own body, it tells you something about who David Benavidez really is underneath the tattoos and the trash talk. He's someone who has had to fight for everything. Nothing was ever just handed to him. At 16 years old, in August of 2013, David made his professional debut. Not in some big American arena, but in Rocky Point, Mexico. A small stage for what would become a massive career. He won by first-round knockout. Pause. And from there, he just kept winning. Fight after fight, his record kept climbing. People in the boxing world started whispering about this kid from Phoenix who fought like a grown man wrapped in a teenager's body. But nobody was ready for what happened next. The youngest champion in history. September 8th, 2017, David Benavidez is 20 years old. 20, and he steps into the ring to fight Ronald Gavril for the vacant WBC super middleweight world title. Think about that for a second. 20 years old, fighting for a world title against a grown, experienced opponent. Most 20-year-olds are worrying about college exams or their first real job. David was fighting for one of the most prestigious belts in the entire sport. The fight was brutal, not a clean, easy night. It was a real, gritty, split decision war. But when the final bell rang and the judges' scorecards were read, David Benavidez had done it. Pause. He became the youngest super middleweight world champion in the history of boxing. Let that sink in for a moment. In a division that has been fought over for decades by legendary fighters, David Benavidez, at 20 years old, put his name at the very top of the history books. He wasn't done either. In his first title defense, he fought Gavril again in a rematch, and this time dominated him clearly, outpointing him with ease. It looked like the sky was the limit. Boxing insiders started calling him a future superstar, a can't-miss talent, the kind of fighter who comes around once in a generation. He had speed, he had power in both hands. He had that killer instinct in the ring that you simply cannot teach. Everything was lining up perfectly. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming, because just 1 year after becoming the youngest world champion in his division's history, David Benavidez was about to lose everything he had built. The fall less than a year after winning his title, in the summer of 2018, David Benavidez was scheduled for a random drug test as part of the WBC's clean boxing program. This is standard for world title holders. Nothing unusual. He probably didn't think twice about it. But on September 18th, 2018, the day before one of the biggest fights in boxing that year, Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin, the results came back. Pause. Positive for cocaine. The boxing world exploded with reaction. Here was this young, unbeaten, record-breaking champion. And suddenly, his name was attached to a drug scandal. 21 years old, and his entire career was hanging by a thread. The very next day, David posted an apology on social media. He didn't try to hide from it or make excuses. He wrote that he was sincerely sorry to the WBC, that he was embarrassed by what happened, and that he knew a lot of people wouldn't see him the same way anymore. He called it a mistake. A young man's mistake. But an apology doesn't undo consequences. The WBC stripped him of his title. He was suspended from the sport. Just like that, the youngest champion in the division's history was sitting at home with no title, no fights, and a reputation that had taken a massive hit. Pause. And here's the part that makes this story so painful when you really think about it. Just weeks before that failed test, Canelo Alvarez had publicly said that after he beat Golovkin, his plan was to move up to 168 pounds, David's weight class, and challenge for the WBC title David was holding. For a split second, the biggest fight of David's young career, a fight against Canelo Alvarez himself, was actually on the table. And then it vanished. Because of one mistake outside the ring. Canelo didn't wait around. He went and fought for a different title instead, at a different weight, and kept building his own legacy while David served his suspension and tried to put the pieces of his career back together. That single moment, that one failed test on one single day, may have cost David Benavidez the biggest opportunity of his entire life. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's a rough story, but he came back and became champion again, right? He's fine now. And yes, that's true. But what a lot of fans don't realize is that this wasn't the only time he lost his title. There's a second fall to this story that most people forget about. Stripped again, David Benavidez fought his way back. He regained the WBC super middleweight title in September of 2019, exactly 1 year after losing it. And for a while, it looked like redemption was complete. But then, in August of 2020, something happened that still makes fans shake their heads today. Benavidez was scheduled to defend his title against a fighter named Roma Alexis Angulo. At the weigh-in, fighters have to hit a specific number on the scale to make the fight official at that weight class. David stepped on the scale, and he weighed 170.8 pounds. Pause. The limit for super middleweight is 168. He missed weight by almost 3 pounds. And because of that, he was stripped of his title. Again, 2 times. 2 title losses, both due to issues completely outside of what happened in the ring. Not because someone beat him, not because he wasn't the better fighter, but because of decisions and mistakes that had nothing to do with his actual boxing ability. Now imagine being David Benavidez in this moment. You are, without question, one of the most talented fighters of your entire generation. Fans who watch you fight know you could beat almost anyone in your division on a given night. but your name keeps getting attached to headlines about scandals and failures instead of headlines about greatness. This is the part of his story that gets buried under the trash talk and the social media clips, because most people only remember the confident, loud, "I want Canelo" version of David Benavidez. They don't remember the 23-year-old kid who had already lost his title twice before he'd even had the chance to prove himself on the biggest stage. But here's what's remarkable. He never stopped fighting. He never quit. He kept training, kept winning fights, kept climbing back up the rankings over and over again, like a man who refused to let his mistakes define the rest of his life. And slowly, painfully slowly, the boxing world started to notice something. Even after everything, David Benavidez was still undefeated. Not one single loss on his professional record, 2 stripped titles, and still, nobody had ever actually beaten him in the ring. That fact alone should have made him one of the biggest stars in the sport. So why? Why did it take years and years for him to get the fights he deserved? The man nobody wanted to fight. This is where David Benavidez's story becomes something bigger than just boxing. This becomes a story about being great and being ignored anyway. As David kept winning fight after fight, beating dangerous, avoided fighters like David Lemieux, Caleb Plant, and Demetrius Andrade, one name kept coming up in every single interview: Canelo Alvarez. Canelo, as most boxing fans know, is the biggest star in the entire sport. Mexican-born, a pound-for-pound great, a massive pay-per-view draw, and David Benavidez, also proudly Mexican-American, made it his mission, publicly, over and over, to call Canelo out. He wasn't shy about it either. In interviews, in press conferences, on social media, David repeated the same message: "I am undefeated. I am the biggest, strongest, most dangerous fighter in this division. Fight me." Pause. And Canelo kept finding other opponents. Fans started noticing the pattern. Canelo would fight other names, sometimes fighters many considered easier fights, while David Benavidez sat there, undefeated, ranked at the top, and completely unable to get the fight made. It became one of the most talked about ghost fights in modern boxing, a fight everyone wanted to see that never actually happened. Boxing analysts debated it constantly. Some said Canelo was simply being strategic, avoiding a genuinely dangerous, bigger, younger opponent who had nothing to lose. Others said David's past mistakes, the failed drug test, the stripped titles, gave promoters an excuse to avoid putting him in the biggest fights. Whatever the real reason was, the result was the same. David kept winning and kept waiting. Eventually, in early 2024, at 27 years old, David made a decision that shocked a lot of fans. He announced he was moving up an entire weight class from super middleweight at 168 pounds to light heavyweight at 175 pounds. Think about what that means for a second. He was walking away from the division where he was already a former 2-time world champion, the division where the Canelo fight, the fight of his dreams, still theoretically existed. He was giving that up to chase greatness somewhere else because he refused to just sit around and wait anymore. At 6'2" and naturally walking around close to 200 pounds between fights, David explained that the constant, brutal weight cutting to make 168 pounds was wearing down his body. It was, he said, simply the natural next step for a fighter his size. But you have to wonder how much of that decision was about his body and how much of it was about finally accepting that the fight he wanted most might never actually come. Climbing the mountain again. At light heavyweight, David Benavidez didn't slow down for a single second. If anything, he looked even more dangerous in his new weight class. He beat Alexander Gvozdyk to capture the WBC interim light heavyweight title. Then, in February of 2025, in one of the most anticipated fights of that year, he faced David Morrell, another undefeated, dangerous, hard-hitting fighter who many believed could actually beat him. Pause. The fight lived up to the hype. Both men landed brutal shots. Both men proved why they were considered elite. But when the final bell rang, it was David Benavidez's hand that was raised, winning a clear, unanimous decision. He kept the streak alive, still undefeated. Later that year, the WBC elevated him again, and he officially became the WBC light heavyweight world champion just weeks after another fighter, Dmitry Bivol, had held that same belt. He went on to defend it, knocking out Anthony Yarde in November of 2025, proving once again that his power translates perfectly at this new, heavier weight class. By 2026, David Benavidez's record stood at an incredible 32 wins, 0 losses, with the vast majority of those wins coming by knockout. 2 different weight classes, multiple world titles, a resume that very few active fighters in the entire sport can match. And yet, even with all of that, even with every single box checked, the same question still followed him everywhere he went. When is Canelo going to fight you? In a strange twist that even boxing insiders couldn't have predicted, by 2026, there were finally real conversations happening about massive fights for David, even matchups involving names like Christian and Billy and other top contenders circling around Canelo's own path. The landscape of boxing was shifting, new promotions were rising, and for the first time in years, it felt like David Benavidez's path to the fights he always deserved might actually be opening up. What this story really means. Here's what I think is the most powerful part of David Benavidez's story. It's not really about Canelo Alvarez at all. It's about what it means to keep showing up. This is a man who became a world champion at 20 years old and lost it within a year because of a mistake he made outside the ring. A man who fought his way back, only to lose that same title again, over 3 pounds on a scale. A man who has spent years hearing his name used as a punchline for the fighter nobody wants to face, while simultaneously being told he's not good enough or not proven enough or too risky to matter. And through every single bit of that, he never lost a fight. Not one. 32 fights, 0 losses, and counting. Think about how much mental strength that actually takes. It's one thing to be talented. Boxing is full of talented fighters who never make it. It's a completely different thing to keep believing in yourself after very public failures, after watching opportunities disappear right in front of you, after hearing people say your name only to talk about the things you did wrong. David Benavidez could have easily let the cocaine scandal define him forever. He could have let the second strip title break his spirit. He could have let years of being avoided by the biggest star in the sport turn him bitter or make him give up on his dream entirely. Instead, he changed weight classes, chased new titles, and kept building, brick by brick, fight by fight, a resume so undeniable that eventually the entire sport had no choice but to respect him. That's the real story here. Not just a boxer chasing one specific opponent, a young man who fell twice in front of the entire world and got back up every single time until his talent became impossible to ignore. So the next time you hear someone call David Benavidez the man nobody wants to fight, I want you to remember the other side of that sentence. He's also the man who refused to disappear. The kid who was 250 pounds at 13 years old and turned his body into a weapon. The champion who lost everything at 21 and clawed his way back to the top, not once, but twice. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest one. It's the one who's been counted out over and over and just keeps proving everyone wrong. If this story moved you, or if you learned something about David Benavidez you didn't know before, let me know down in the comments. And if you want more real, honest stories about the fighters behind the headlines, the struggles, the falls, and the comebacks, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next story.